With the closing arc of Attack on Titan's last season finally upon us, I started to really think about the possible ways the events of the show could play out. The rumbling has begun, and it seems like there's very little anyone could do to stop Eren at this point. But should anyone attempt to stop Eren? I mean, it was the only way the people of Paradi could avoid total extinction, right? The show makes a massively compelling argument in favor of Eren starting the rumbling, and it really does seem like the only viable option Eren has. But there's one major flaw in his plan, and it's outlined by an idea the show reinforces again and again, especially throughout the fourth season. The rumbling is just a band-aid solution for a much bigger problem. From very early on in the show, we see division and turmoil amongst the people of Paradi. From the head of the Reeds Company valuing his own merchandise above people's lives, to regional Lord Wald caring more about his own life than the lives of the people he governs, division is omnipresent on the island of Paradi. These divisions may seem fairly insignificant at first, but that's only because they are overshadowed by the looming crisis at hand, that being the Titans. The Titans breaching the wall created a sense of camaraderie for many of the refugees that fled from the initial breach, but unfortunately, that's as far as the unity extended. Just within the second episode, we hear a garrison regiment officer comparing the refugees to animals that should be fattened up and thrown into the front lines as a buffer. This implies something very important about human nature, that most people only truly care about problems when they are personally affected by them. Sympathy is too abstract of an emotion for people to continuously care about causes that don't materially make a difference within their own lives. This is especially abundant in this instance, since the refugees from the Outer District and Wall Maria worsen the famine for the people living in and around Wall Rose, causing an even greater rift between them. The fact that people didn't revolt at any point within the 100 years of peace before the Titans breached the wall is remarkable in and of itself. It's implied that there was at least some degree of disapproval of the government spending money on reclaiming lost land from the Titans. As one citizen sarcastically remarked,
"Nothing like seeing our hard-earned taxes go toward keeping those bastards fat and happy on human gristle."
all this to say, if Eren's plan does come to fruition, and all life outside the wall is eradicated, there's no guarantee that there wouldn't be division again inside the walls due to some other difference in opinion. Without the people of Paradi having a common enemy or conflict to rally around, it'd be impossible to guarantee that someone doesn't make a selfish vie for power and continue the cycle of misery the Marleyans initially forced upon them. So that must mean Zeke's plan was better, right? I mean, the Eldians were initially the ones that forced Marley to become a military superpower to avert the devastation of the rumbling. So surely, if all the Eldians were to die out, there'd be peace. Unfortunately, no. Zeke and Eren's plans may seem like complete opposites at a glance, but in reality, they are two sides of the same coin. If Zeke's wish really did come true, and all Eldians were wiped off the face of the earth, there likely would be a short period of peace. But after that, the Marleyans would run into the exact same dilemma the citizens of Paradi would have faced if Eren's plan had succeeded. The Marleyans wouldn't even need to endure through a transitional period in which a certain group inevitably rises to power like the citizens of Paradi would have, since they already have a military hierarchy. They would just resume conquering more territory, because who's to say that another group wouldn't see their existence as a threat with the way that they oppressed Eldians living amongst them? As bizarre as it sounds, the only way Zeke's wish could have eliminated suffering for the Marleyans and all people alike would have been through wishing no one could reproduce at all. This mirrors a concept first echoed by the ancient Greeks, that in modern day is referred to as antinatalism. Adopters of this belief system believe that suffering is the most fundamental and inherent part of life, since in order to achieve joy and happiness, one must alleviate suffering first. And since the universe naturally tends towards disorder, suffering is guaranteed and inevitable, while pleasure is a fleeting state in which suffering is temporarily lessened. So although Zeke meant well with his plan, he didn't factor in that humanity may still tend toward brutality and disorder, even with the Eldians gone. Also, it's never explicitly stated that the contract with the devil was a one-time thing, so even with Eldians being eradicated and their contract being ended, a new blood may seek the temptation of power again in order to protect their people or conquer territory. So if both Eren and Zeke's plan would have led to similar, equally horrific outcomes, what could either of them have wished for in order to achieve the peace they both so desperately desired? This potential wishes principles were actually outlined beautifully in Season 4 through the character Gabby Braun. She learned that the so-called Island Devils of Paradi weren't actually devils at all. They were regular people just like her. She had so much hatred and rage built up for them not because they were all evil and putrid human beings, but because she'd never actually met any of them and lacked the understanding that they were also regular people living their lives just like she was. If this bridge could have been gapped sooner, then maybe countless years of bloodshed could have been avoided. The wish's underlying principles would have to echo these understandings. Ideally, the wish would rewrite history so that instead of conquering Ymir's people, King Fritz established a treaty with them and chose to live harmoniously amongst or alongside them from the beginning rather than pillaging and conquering their territory. The few caveats to this are that there would have to be a mutual incentive for both the rulers and the people of this rewritten Eldian civilization to upkeep peace and not conquest or revolt, and that this rewriting of history may lead to many of the people that both Eren and Zeke love, as well as themselves, possibly being erased from history due to a massive butterfly effect. Ultimately, the events of this final part of the series will answer the question of whether or not Eren will inherit these principles and use his power to bring understanding amongst the people of the world, or continue the path of destruction history had followed for thousands of years before him. I believe if he does adopt this philosophy that I've laid out, his successor will be Gabi Braun, since she understands these principles as well as anyone, and is essentially an alternate version of Eren that saw the light. Although this would imply that she would die after 13 years and continue the cycle of entrusting someone new with the founding titan, this is the best way forward in my eyes, and there will have to be martyrs like her and her successors for humanity to continue to peacefully exist. After all, happiness cannot exist without some amount of suffering.